Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research-based information that fits your family. I'm Lori Cordles, parent of 3 in 2 different life stages. 2 are launched and 1 is still in high school, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of 2 littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator. Today, we'll talk about the realities of raising a family and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. Hey, everybody. Welcome again back to the Science of Parenting podcast.
Took a little break.
Yes.
Here we are.
And it's good to be back.
Yes, it
We
is.
love just like sharing information. And well, honestly, we like spending time together to put these episodes together. So there's a little self-serving, but we have a lot of fun.
It is. And this season, with brand new season, we are going to talk about regulation.
Yes.
What does that mean? Like regulation,
right? And season 9,
I know.
By the way, 9.
Yes, 9.
We just keep going. Like that number
hands.
just keeps every time it gets bigger.
I know. 2 hands are needed. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So this season, we're going to talk about regulation. And again, most of this season is going to come from a book called The Handbook of Parenting. We have volume 5 that we're using called The Practice of Parenting. I love that, like, we can say that there's this handbook of parenting.
The literal, everyone's like, well, you don't get a handbook. Yeah. No. There is one. It's not really targeted for every parent. It's very researchy.
It is.
But it exists.
It is. And thank you, Mark Bornstein, for editing our handbook.
Yes. And this season, we get to tap into that chapter in the book called Parenting and Children's Self-Regulation by Dr. Wendy Grolnick and colleagues.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So let's start off, right? Like explaining what this word regulation. Okay, I have to just tell you, like, I know that there is some Western movie where the key actor says, regulators, ride up, or regulators, mount up. So every time we say this word regulation, I keep in the back of my mind, I hear this, regulators, mount up.
Well, I am not familiar with that movie, but I'm glad it brings you joy.
I know. Yeah.
Well, and I'm just like, regulation. We talk about that in previous episodes, but we don't like talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'll be good to dig into it this season. So, and I mean, like always, my favorite thing is for us to look at a definition. Mm-hmm. And so how do we define, what are we talking about? Like, what are you gonna, like, Mackenzie, what are you getting at here? What are you gonna talk about for this many episodes on this word? And so I do want to look at a definition for regulation, but I want us to take a little bit of a different approach. Usually I find a definition I like and we just share it. This time we're going to look at a couple different definitions from a couple different people. And then we'll just kind of see like how that adds to our understanding for each of us. So
sounds good.
I have the first one. So Posner and Rothbart in 2000 defined self-regulation as the process of individuals modulating behavior and affect.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, I know. So I would say instead of like modulating, maybe like controlling or affecting or altering your behavior. And your affect can include like your emotions and thought. But
okay, got it.
Okay, so sorry. So modulating behavior and affect. But I love this phrase they add, given the contextual demands. So given a situation. So regulation in their terms are really about like aligning how we behave and how we think and how we emit emotions, or how we emote. Is that the verb? How we emote. But like behaviors or cognitions and thoughts and emotions, and how we do that in a way that's appropriate to the situation.
Oh, okay,
so it's not just about like, I think sometimes when I think of regulation, I think of like temper tantrums, right? You need to regulate your emotions.
Yes.
In a way that's appropriate. But it's also this idea of what's expected around us.
Yes.
That's what you're regulating. Like, it's not appropriate to act this way here. So I really liked that idea of given contextual demands.
I like
so that's
that.
One.
I do like
technical. That. You know, I love a term. I love terminology.
And I'm a simple girl. So I'm a simple girl. My definition is going to be short and sweet, right? Yeah. So regulation is then the act of managing thoughts and emotions and it's initiated by yourself. Okay, so one little big word I do like. Little big word? One big word
Little
I
big
do
word.
like. It's a little big word. Is the word autonomous. All right. So that just means
Mm,
like I chose it. I did it myself, right?
yeah.
So my simple definition is that regulation refers to things that I initiate myself, that are thoughts or behaviors.
Mm, yeah. Just you're in charge of it.
Yes, I'm in
Just
charge
do
of
it
it.
yourself. Yeah. That makes sense. Hence
Yeah. Hence
self-regulation,
self. Yes.
hence.
I initiated it. Did it myself. Thanks.
Yes. Gotta figure it out.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Now, a different one by Murray and colleagues, a different definition says the act of managing cognition and emotion to enable goal directed actions. Okay, I'll say it again. The
Okay.
act of managing cognition and emotion, so managing like our thoughts and our emotions to enable goal directed action. So, in my mind, like to do something with a goal in mind, right?
Yes.
Like, in order for me to accomplish the goal of communicating effectively, in order for me to accomplish the goal of behaving appropriately in public,
Yes.
but like, so they say it's the act of managing. They specify specifically your thoughts and your actions, your cognition. Um, and so they give the examples of goal directed actions might be things like organizing your behavior,
Hmm.
controlling your impulses, or solving problems constructively.
That's a great idea. Solve
Right?
your problems constructively.
Constructively, we love
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So, yeah, just a few different definitions, some a little more complicated,
Yeah.
and looking at different ways of thinking about it for sure.
Well, okay, so which one would you like align most with
Mm.
you and your understanding in your family?
Okay, when I think of regulation, I think of more like that first definition. Now, I did not think of the word modulating because I barely know what that means. Um, but so I might say like aligning is probably the word I like. So like
I like that word.
aligning our like behavior. I probably wouldn't say affect, but I like breaking down. They do when they describe like their concept of regulation, they break it down to like behavior, emotions, and cognitions, aka
Mhm.
thoughts. So I
Yes.
like that they break that down that way. But so I might say like they're aligning those things given the situation. Like I'm going to
Yes.
align what's appropriate given where I am, what's expected, yada yada.
Yes.
So I like that first one. I like a little technical. We
Sure.
know.
It's all right.
We
It's all
know.
right.
But because I think okay, yeah. It's not just emotions that we're regulating. It's
No,
not just
exactly.
behavior. It's all these things. But
It is, absolutely.
okay, what about you? What do you I have a strong guess where
Well,
I feel like you
okay.
might land.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna land in the simple version, and but I really need to give our writer Barb Dunn Swanson some credit because she
Mhm,
really helped me think about, the reason I think I gravitate towards this idea of actions
mhm.
initiated by ourself, right? That's what I think of when I think of regulation. And the reason I think of this, credit to Barb, is the age of my kids. Okay,
Oh,
so my
okay.
children are older. I really want them to initiate their
Oh.
their regulationing, right? They're like, I
Yeah.
want them to initiate the ability to self-regulate themselves. Okay,
Mhm.
they're older, they're not with me all the time. They are out in public, they're working full-time jobs. Some of them are. Some it sounds like
Yes.
I have a whole like I only have three.
A
I
whole
don't have
crew.
it's not like right. But because of their age,
Mhm.
that simple definition of actions initiated by the self, that's important for them at this age. Now, as they when they were younger, I think I probably too would have gravitated more towards the definition that you shared, because as you look at them as younger children, their
Mhm.
behavior, their thoughts, and their emotions, like those are all the parenting questions that we get, right?
Yeah.
Why does my child behave this way, think this way, feel this way, right? And so I think Barb has
Yes.
a really good point to say our definitions about self regulation could possibly change based on the age
Yeah.
of our child. And especially because as they grow, they have more life experience and they have
Yeah.
more people to see
Like models.
self-regulating,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they have these role models to think about. Ooh, I don't want to behave that way. Ooh, I do
Yes.
want to behave this way. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, super great point that she made.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to add to it, yes, the idea of control,
Mhm.
right? Like, you're in charge of this, you can
Right.
choose this. Like, that makes total sense. And I might argue, not argue, I might also add
Yes.
that because they've maybe gotten better already at regulating emotions and thoughts and
Mhm.
behaviors, that it is focused more on the control aspect of it. Because the internal part, they hopefully are better at by the time they're teens, adults, yada
Yes.
yada. Like,
Yes.
all of it. Yes to all of it.
Yes to all of it. Lots of definitions. We just gave
Yeah.
ourselves permission to believe more than one definition.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's almost like a pluralistic approach,
Right?
Lori.
It's all
We love to say there's more than one way to do something, including
Yes,
more than one way to raise great kids. There's
exactly.
more than one way to define regulation.
Yeah. So, okay, well, no matter how we define regulation, self-regulation essentially it can refer to any behavior, any emotion that a person exhibits,
Mhm.
and essentially we're doing those as a response to what's happening around us. Okay,
Yes.
so I really think the idea of talking about behavior, our thoughts, and our emotions
Mhm.
can be helpful to parents to think about. Those are three things that we want our children to learn to self-regulate, so they're
Yeah.
gonna need our help as they
Yeah.
learn.
Mhm. Well, and I think okay, so breaking it down, right? Let's look at these examples of what does it look like to regulate behavior? What does it
Mhm.
look like to regulate cognition, right? Like, what does it look like to regulate your thoughts? It's like, can I?
Yeah.
Yes, you actually
Yes.
do. All
Yes.
right. And then versus emotion. And so I'll start with behavior.
Okay.
So, ways that we regulate our behavior, right? I might not feel like doing these things all the time, but I regulate when I choose to follow the rules, right?
Mhm.
When I choose to pay attention to what's happening in front of me, right? Even like in a meeting, I regulate my behavior because I'm like, I am supposed to listen to this and I don't feel like
Mhm.
it. Right. And even things like temptation and impulses, that's behavior, right? As I think of like the marshmallow test. Some of you
Yes.
have maybe heard of this before, right? So, like, you put a young kid in a room with a marshmallow on the table and you tell them, if you don't eat this
Mhm.
right now, when I come back, you can have more than one marshmallow
Mhm.
or you'll get some kind of reward. Can the child resist the impulse to eat that marshmallow sitting right in front of them when that adult leaves the room, right? That's behavior regulation. So resisting a temptation. And I even think like with our older kids, teens, I mean, let's be honest, like sexual behavior, right? There's impulses, there's temptation with things that look cool with their friends or like
Mhm.
a risky behavior like right? Should I jump off the bridge with my friends?
Right.
And
Yes.
but all of these different things, when we regulate our behavior, right? We align it with the expectations around us. And so those are just a few examples, right? Following rules and things like resisting temptation and impulse.
And lots of times we think about self-regulation, we think about behaviors.
Yeah.
So, the more we read this chapter, the more I thought, gosh, we are also regulating our thoughts. And so
Yeah.
I'll cover that second section, this idea of we can regulate and hold information
Mm,
while we process, right? We've
yeah.
got these things in our memory. We can resist distractions, we can stay focused. But at the same time, we can be flexible and shift our attention to different things. And so,
Hmm.
another great example from Barbara Ryder was, we know that it's so important that children spend time out in nature.
Mm,
Research tells us that going out in nature, it really allows our brain to shift and do the work, right? Because when
yes.
we're out in nature, it allows our brain to take some time to relax and enjoy and refocus, so that when we go back into the classroom, say we just had recess, then we can pay attention to those math problems,
Hmm.
that we can shift and be flexible in our thinking, and at the same time resist distractions.
Yes.
That's self-regulation. That's what we're talking
Yes.
about this whole season, regulation. So it's also about thinking. How do we regulate what we think?
And I even think I
I
think
think.
I'm thinking about thinking. The way our kids like when they study for a test, like in high
Mm,
school,
mhm,
one of the things they talked about in this chapter was like working memory. Essentially, like I keep this piece of information where I can access it easily. And
yes.
so when you study, when our kids study, they're regulating their thoughts,
Mhm.
right? The way that they learn, the way that they take information in. So like attitude, learning, those are all cognitive things.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm.
Okay, what about emotional
All right.
regulation?
So I have young children, so I think about this a lot. Right? And so one of the terms they use is arousal. So like emotional arousal of like how strongly this emotion comes on, right? Kind of
Yes.
intensity. Um but so when we regulate our emotions, we can maybe tamper that. We can slow it
Mm,
down a little bit. They also talk about like inhibiting or initiating emotions, but like essentially giving ourselves permission to say, you know what, it is okay for me
mhm,
to cry. It is
mhm.
okay to laugh here, or it is not okay to laugh here.
Yes.
Um, and so that ability to kind of control those emotions. And something else they talked about that as our team kind of discussed, this idea of avoiding emotion. And now
Yes.
sometimes people are like, no, 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 don't avoid emotion. But actually, that there are times that can be appropriate.
Mhm.
One example that Barb gave was like when you're really excited, let's say your team wins the championship game, right? And they still need to go through and like slap hands and be a good
Yes.
sport. And you can't do the full celebration yet because you haven't done that yet. And so in that way, you're avoiding the emotion, right? I'm going to hold that for a moment. Or I'm going to hold out crying. This is
Mhm.
me. I need to hold on. I'm not going to cry yet. This is not the appropriate time. And so sometimes it's avoiding the emotion, but I would say adding the caveat temporarily, right? I'm
Yes.
not going to feel this yet. Now's not the
Yes.
time to feel this.
Yes.
And so those things are emotion regulation, helping our kids learn like it's not appropriate yet, or it's not appropriate here, or that
Mhm.
expression of it is not appropriate here. And all of those things are how we regulate, right? How
Yes.
much we're going to feel something, letting ourselves kind of get that feeling out, or they talk about inhibit or initiate. Like
Yes.
it's okay to feel those things, but regulating them a little bit can help
Yes.
us. And I would
Yes.
also add, I've been learning a lot about this idea of feeling your feelings. Have you heard this? Like having the physical sensation of your feelings is a really good
Yes.
emotion regulation practice. So like when I feel nervous, I feel jittery in my hands. When I
Mhm.
feel nervous, right? Or when I feel excited or happy or sad. And so that's another one that is a way that we regulate
Yes.
our emotions.
Yes. Oh, I love those. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And so I like this breakdown of the behavior, the cognition, and the emotion. I like this a little better. In the research on regulation, there are I love a term, but these terms in particular, when it comes to regulation, they get muddy for me. There's things like,
Sure.
if you're familiar with regulation at all, you maybe have heard, or maybe if your child has a special needs diagnosis, certain
Mhm.
aspects of regulation might be what you talk about a little more, like this term called executive functioning,
Mhm.
which kind of has
Yes.
to do with like planning and organizing, as
Yes.
I understand it. But then there's also like effortful control. There's also compliance. And so there are a lot of like subtypes of regulation. We aren't going to really get into them this
No.
season. It's cool.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
it's cool, but it's a little overwhelming. And so we want to focus a little more on the practical side of regulation. How do we do it? How do we encourage it? How do we model it? And so we choose this behavior, cognition, emotion breakdown rather than the accurate but technical words.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes, and they're simpler, right? Yeah,
yeah, I think it's simpler. I think it's simpler.
yes. Okay, so I like one word that you said was this idea of aligning and controlling. So
Mhm.
I really that speaks to me. But can you give me a time when you were maybe helping teach or align, right?
Yeah.
Help your child to align to a specific type of regulation. Did you think of any while we were working
Mm.
through this chapter? And you may not have realized what you were doing at the time.
To a certain type of regulation. Okay, so I wanna do an emotion that we don't always dig so much into when we think of regulation. Um, my very perceptive daughter,
Mhm.
noticing all of these things, the emotion of curiosity.
Ooh, yes.
And so it embarrasses me
Oh,
when
I see
she's
where you're going
curious
with
about
this. Okay,
something she
gotcha.
notices about
Gotcha.
other people,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And sometimes it's something that's sensitive, right?
Sure. Sure.
And so sometimes I need her to regulate the emotion of curiosity by uh instead of thinking that's weird,
Mhm.
that's different than I expected.
Yes. I
Um,
like that.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess that's kind of cognition though.
It is.
That's
Yes.
cognitive, right? The way she's thinking
Yes.
about it instead of
Mhm.
that's weird, that's different than I expected or that's different than I'm used to. Okay, so
Yes.
that's a cognitive. Okay, I think I might this example might fit all of them.
That's okay.
Okay.
There are no rules. We
Okay,
like
we can
we
do
get
whatever we
plus
want.
we get to make up our rules. This is our podcast.
Okay,
Yes.
so cognitively with curiosity, I help her regulate that by helping her flip that kind of attitude about it. Okay, so that's one way I teach cognitive regulation, I guess.
Okay.
Um, and then I don't know whether this is emotion or behavior, but teaching her that instead of pointing out why does that person blank, teaching her I'm okay, you can always ask me. If you're not sure, you can
Yes.
always ask me, but wait until a time when you can ask me and I'm the only one that hears it.
Sure.
Whether that's if you can whisper in my ear right now, whether that's which I mean sometimes I'm not the only one who hears that though.
Yes.
Cuz it loud whisper, but
Yes.
anyway, but helping her learn instead of just blurting out the thing she's curious about or that she notices, helping her regulate that like you know what? If I'm noticing something, I can ask my mom, or ask
Ah,
my dad, but I can ask that adult, but just so they hear, so it's not loud to everybody. So
yes.
I think that's kind of both. But
Yes.
curiosity is an emotion that I don't always think of as an emotion, but
No, I
that's
would
mine.
agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what about you? I feel like I did not follow your rules of your question.
Oh, no, that's all right.
But
So,
yeah, like a certain type of regulation and how you've taught it.
yeah, so I feel like I mean, it's our I don't wanna give away, like, the end of our example for a strategy, so I think I'll save that little
Okay.
story because it
Okay.
ties right into the strategy we're gonna share. But, for one of my daughters, emotions are difficult,
Mm,
in both directions, right? So,
okay.
with her diagnosis, what we know about the diagnosis is that this particular diagnosis, they feel emotions in such a really big way.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so I spent a lot of time when she was younger really trying her to learn self-regulation strategies
Mhm.
to handle how big those emotions
Mm.
felt. And
Yes.
so, really helping her to recognize that those were important feelings, but expressing them in such a big way wasn't always appropriate. So,
Yes.
as she
Yes.
grew and began to feel more things and more big feelings, what we also know about this diagnosis is that sometimes then what happens is they shut down completely to stop
Mm.
feeling such
Oh,
big
like it's too much.
emotions.
It's overwhelming for my
Too
system.
much, right?
Yeah.
Too much system overload, shut down. And
Yes.
so as she's grown, I've had to teach her to express emotions such as
Mm.
I don't I don't like how this feels. I don't want to feel this way.
Yes.
But it's okay to say that you feel angry, you feel sad. You don't have to
Mhm.
stuff because that system is so overstimulated by the emotions. It just automatically, like, there's no regulation. It shuts down to not feel. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
anxiety, nervousness, those types of things. So it's almost had to be a shift of, okay, first I had to teach her how to self-regulate. And now I'm helping her to self-regulate in a different way to be able to also express them.
Yes. Yes. And I was like, it's okay to avoid a little bit, but yeah, not
Yes.
stuff and don't feel ever.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, and
Exactly.
it's a different take, and, I think even I mean, obviously, we've talked about in a previous episode, the difference between special needs and temperament
Mhm.
can be the intensity, right, of
Yes.
that, or the longevity of it, but so I even think of, like, parents with really mild children, right? Really emotionally intense, like, always level, always right
Mhm.
here, never expressing more. That yes, it can be about teaching them. That can be regulation, is teaching your
Yes.
kids to say, I don't like that, instead of
Yes.
say nothing.
Exactly. Don't
Yeah.
wanna play that game right now.
Yeah.
I'd rather go outside, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's okay, expressing those. Okay, so
Love
we
that.
understand what regulation is, right?
Mhm.
We, have just talked about 3 different ways that
Yep.
we regulate. So, then how do we help our kids really put this into practice?
Mhm. So, my answer, Lori and I are gonna do 2 different takes on this. My answer would be the terminology, here I am. Always. Um, internalization.
Okay.
So, basically, how do I help my kid regulate themselves, right? Instead of
Mm,
me always needing to help them regulate, as they get older, I want them to learn to regulate themselves.
yes.
Helping them internalize those behaviors or those thoughts or those emotional practices. And so I would say, right? If I'm trying to help, like I think of like bedtime.
Mhm.
Part of the reason we have a bedtime routine, one, it helps make our lives easier.
Yes.
But I also want my kids to have that practice when they get older. That they value, even if they don't do the exact check marks,
Yes.
that they're meeting their basic needs, like brushing their teeth, like getting pajamas on. Like I can tell you, my daughter needs quiet, calm down time, just
Mhm.
like I do before bed. But that she learns those things about herself now, so she can regulate that when she's older. So I would say I look for opportunities to help her see the value in these practices, and so that our kids are internalizing, and so they use this term intrinsic motivation.
Mhm.
Basically, like, I do this because I think it's important, rather than I do this to avoid getting in trouble or to
Yes.
get some kind of reward.
Yes.
um, and so I think that's really, how do we help our kids learn to regulate, and to do it regularly and to do it themselves? We help them internalize why it's important, right? So like, what are the consequences of actions? How does behaving this way actually meet your own needs better, right? So I think how we do that is by helping them internalize why it's important.
Absolutely. So we want that, when they're by the time they're preteens, we want them to
Yes.
internalize the need to take a shower on their own
Please. Yes.
instead of me having to remind you, right? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and
Okay.
that they do it because they think, I need to take a shower because that's important, not I need to take a shower because otherwise my parent is going to be on my case.
Exactly.
That's the difference
Exactly.
between internalization. Such a good
So
example.
you did say like the word that I'm going to use,
Did I?
and that you did. You totally said it. And you said the reason we have a bedtime routine, and I was like,
Thieved it. I took
yeah,
it.
you took it. And in all honesty, that is not something that we did when my kids were younger. We
Yeah.
didn't have a bedtime routine.
Mhm.
But what a routine does is it makes it regular. Oh,
Mhm.
that word regular sounds like
Regulate?
regulation, right? So
Yes.
we are creating a pattern that actually ends up helping with internalization,
Mhm.
right? So it's coming at the same
Yeah,
idea
from
2
either
different
sides of
ways.
it.
Yeah, right? So with the idea is that ultimately we want the child to do this on their own, right?
Mhm.
Autonomously. I'm gonna throw that word in. That's my word of the
Yeah.
day, autonomously, right? So we want them to do this on their own, have their own self-discipline so that they
Mhm.
can say, I can control my emotions. I can control the temptation. I can wait. So we can do this from creating patterns, regular patterns, routines,
Mhm.
that help us to internalize. So I have kind of a funny story and little, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's a caveat or whatnot, but making the bed has never really been a regular routine. And I've read up on the importance of, you know, creating habits and doing that. You could just start with your bed, right? So
Mhm.
I know all those things. I
You
got it.
know that.
I know it. Choose not to. Okay.
Same.
So my middle daughter went away to college,
Yeah.
and her roommate made her bed every day. And so my middle daughter began to make her bed every day, which I thought was super cute because, oh, look, she's
Yes.
internalizing it and it's not her mother getting on her case, as you said, right?
Yes.
So a year and a half later,
Yeah.
the child still makes her bed every day, even if she gets up late and is in a rush. So I look at that. Okay, it created a pattern. It was regular.
Yes.
She's internalized it. And as we've been going through this episode, talking through it, I need to ask her, what is it about making your bed every day that
Yeah.
makes you feel, and I don't want to give her the words. Like, I don't want to say,
Yeah.
does it make you feel in control? Does it make you,
Yeah.
feel
But
happy?
why?
Does it, yeah, like, I want to know the why, because she does it.
Yeah.
And, and like, this is a kid who I would say she likes routines. She likes structure. She
Mhm.
has typically formed that herself. That was in her
Yeah.
temperament from the beginning. And so I keep thinking, well, why didn't I mean, I know there was a period of time where I think I tried to have everyone make their beds every day, but, I suppose living in a, 12 by 12 room for 9 months out of the year together. Anyway, that's my routine, regular
Yeah.
internalization. I'll have to get back to you on why she does it story.
Yes. I'll say it's interesting. Okay, and I have a theory.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little always dorky. So there's self-determination theory is this
Mhm.
idea that every human, child, adult, has three basic like internal needs, and that's the need for mastery, so like feeling good,
Uh-huh.
feeling competent, you've mastered it, right?
Yes.
Skills, feeling autonomous, there's the autonomy, but that you have choice and you can affect what's happening around you. And then connection, right? So like
Sure.
human connection relationships. And so Desi and Ryan are the people who come up with this theory, and but that everybody has these needs, and when things fit them, they help them internalize. And so I would argue that that routine and a lot of others
Mhm.
might fit several of those needs of like I feel in control, like I have my life together when I make my bed,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Yes.
I, there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's
Well,
something
and
there,
mastery, I mean, it looks amazing, right?
right?
Mastery.
Way
And
better than my bed looks
honestly,
every
if
morning.
you think about connection, so the fact that her roommate did it, I mean, that was
Yes.
something that they could appreciate about each other.
Mhm.
It's something they could, connect over that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and even if it was just a little like positive reinforcement from her roommate of like,
Mhm.
I think our room looks good when we make our beds.
Exactly.
Could be that simple. That's connection.
Theory. Got it. Oh,
Theory,
perfect.
self-determination theory, guys. I will try
I'll
not to
tell
talk
I'll
about it
tell her that's
constantly.
why she does it.
You're like, "Did you know? Do you wanna
Did
know
you
why?"
know?
Self-determination theory.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I think routines are a great example and of kind of how we internalize. We help our kids find value in these things. We want them to internalize that they're important. Those like behavior regulation, emotion regulation, cognition regulation, that they do it themselves because they think it's important. I think that's
So
important.
so
Important, important,
it is
important.
important. So boom. Boom,
There it
like,
is.
boom, there
Code
it is.
cracked.
Code cracked. We cracked the
That's how we
code.
teach our kids to regulate.
This podcast has been brought to you by
Regulation. Technology. No, technology. I was going to say terminology and I said
Termin
also technology, I guess.
Also technology, yes, yes. So
Oh man.
we have figured out, we understand what regulation is, the different ways, and now we can help our kids put it into practice. So I think it's time for our strategy.
Yes. And
Yes.
it only felt like, okay, episode 1 of a
Yes.
season on regulation.
Yes.
It is time for a throwback to our favorite
Yes.
parenting strategy, regulation strategy, every strategy,
Every strategy. Ready?
interaction, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It is
Stop,
stop, breathe,
breathe, talk.
talk.
And
Yeah.
if this is your first episode that you've ever listened to, we are so excited to explain this to you. But if you've been with us for a while, you've maybe heard it before. But it's time for a reminder of what are we talking about when we casually bring up stop, breathe, talk, and why it's important. So,
Absolutely. And
mhm,
here's the thing about this strategy. It can be used at the beginning of
mhm.
needing to self-regulate. It can be used in the middle of, oh my gosh, I need to self-regulate. It can be used towards the end when all chaos has ensued and you think there is no way out. There is. It's called stop. breathe, talk. And
It's
the
my favorite.
idea of this is exactly, we're simple, but we're using a framework,
Yeah.
right? It's a simple framework
My
to
favorite.
to meet both of our needs. The idea that we recognize things are out of control, or we recognize things are about to get out of control. We recognize our regulation is about to become dysregulated, another big word. But we can take a moment, we can pause, we can stop and think and take that moment to recognize that we need to take a breath, whether it's a literal breath or a figurative breath.
Mhm.
It's just this pause, this moment to say, I do not like the direction that this is going. I need to pause. Maybe I take a breath. Maybe I take a big breath times 6, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the breath part. Stop, take breath.
Mhm.
And then I can talk it out. I can talk in a different direction. I can move in a different direction. I can change the way that this interaction is going. So it allows us to shift and begin to self-regulate wherever we
Yes.
are at in the process, whatever age we are in the
Mhm.
process.
However dysregulated we already
However
are.
dysregulated, yes, and that's,
Mm.
that's the example I sometimes share as my one-year-old, my one and I don't even think she was 1.5. I know that
Mm.
she was my first child, and she was trying desperately to get her shoe off of her little
Yes.
foot. Right, and she's laying on the floor kicking and trying to pull that shoe off, and I just kept thinking, I gotta help this kid calm down. I need to stay calm. And I would tell her, tell mommy help, please. Tell mommy
Mm.
help, please. And so
Mm.
whether I knew it or not, I was doing the stop, breathe, talk. I was modeling it for her.
Yes.
I wasn't really thinking that my, 1-year-old was going to say, mommy, please help me. Okay. But I just needed to give her that break and that pause and change the direction of her behavior.
Absolutely. And another way we kind of explain this as with punctuation as an example.
Mhm.
And so actually as you're talking through this and this whole episode, I feel like it's all coming together. Sometimes when we stop, we're
Mhm.
stopping behavior, right? Like I am not behaving in an appropriate way.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're stopping an emotion like, "Whoa, I'm really mad."
Mhm.
But sometimes it can even be something like, "Whoa, I have a bad attitude about this." Or I even think like with our kids, I'm giving attention to the wrong thing.
Yes.
That can be cognitive regulation of like,
Yes.
stop, I'm focusing on that and I need to shift that.
Yes.
So stop is that opportunity to say, I need to regulate, whether that's
Mhm.
emotions, behavior, or thoughts. And so we talk about that as the exclamation point. If your interaction with your child is is a paragraph written out with punctuation, it's the exclamation point is when we're like, whoa, this is headed a direction.
Mhm.
Is that is that the direction I want it to go? So that's the exclamation point. Big feeling, right? Strong, a
Big
lot's
feeling.
happening. All right. And then the breath is as this paragraph is going, we come to a comma,
Mhm.
right? The middle of the sentence, right? It tells us to take a little pause. Now, sometimes this pause is a walk around the block. Sometimes I have walked away from the kitchen table more times than I could count on all of my appendages because I needed to take a breath.
Mhm.
So sometimes it is just a, and that's going to help you get regulated, but sometimes it's a longer one. My favorite thing to cite about this is a study that found a 6 to 10 second breath regulates your nervous system and your cardiovascular system. So just a
Mm.
can regulate your whole body. I literally feel different. Like
Mhm.
I feel different when I take that big breath.
Absolutely.
Oh, I feel so much calmer. But so it does. I'm like, now I'm settled. I'm good.
Ah.
Too bad it's the end of the episode, dude. But that breath, that breathing is about taking pause, like that comma. And then
Mhm.
the talk is about the ellipsis or the dot dot dot.
Mhm.
So if you think of that paragraph, right? All these things are happening, exclamation points, and then okay, comma, take a breath. You come to an ellipsis and it can change the direction of something, right? So like everything was going terribly until dot dot
Dot, dot,
dot.
dot.
And that's the thing is once we've taken that opportunity to stop, breathe, get regulated, the way that we act and the way that we speak can change the direction. And
Absolutely.
so we love stop, breathe, talk. And it's never come full circle on me like that of the like behavior, cognition, and emotion. Like, yeah, there's all
It
kinds
just
of
hit
different
all
things related to
3.
stopping.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's our favorite, right? Because it
It
applies
is.
to everything and everybody.
Yeah.
So stop, breathe, talk. That's our strategy for the week.
That is our strategy. Okay, so we have mentioned several different times throughout this episode that our writer Barb Dunn Swanson gave us some great insight. So we decided that, you know, if you mention the guru a lot, you better bring the guru in. So that's what we're doing today.
Oh, we love seeing her face come in here. Hi, Barb.
Hey, season 9. How can it be?
I know. It's crazy.
Well, you have given us so much to think about. And Mackenzie Johnson, you started out by saying, let's see how we can add to our understanding. Wow. And you know, when you think about this idea of regulation, it's about us together, us and our kids.
Yeah.
And that co-regulation is so key, no matter what the age, right? Not having to do something by myself, especially if I think of those young ones, those
Yes.
young littles, they are having to learn so very much.
Yes, all at
And
once.
all at
Yes,
once.
all
And
at
then they
once.
have these big feelings that you mentioned with no idea of how to express them or how to do it in a way that's going to ultimately get them what they need or want. So co-regulating, in other words,
I love that.
a mom or dad or a caregiver helps that young person think through what it is they're needing, think through what they want to say in ways that are helpful,
Yes.
not hurtful.
Yes, helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
that they need our
sometimes
help. They need our help.
Yes.
you got it.
They're
Sometimes-
learning. They're little. Even when they're
and
big, they're little.
Yeah.
And I want to say something that's hurtful because I'm hurt.
Mm.
But that's where I need someone to co-regulate with me to show me that maybe my choice of words, like you mentioned, Mackenzie, could be important.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know what that leads us back to is our values. Our values. And what a great example. Your daughter started making her bed because she saw her roommate made her bed.
Yes.
And you know what? She had a value. I value our friendship. I value the fact that we're going to be sharing this living space. And if I want her to respect me as a roommate, I'll go the extra step and make the bed so that she sees that it's important to me too,
Yes.
or that I value her. Values play a big role.
Yeah, what ways we want them to regulate related to our values.
Yes.
Oh, and the last thing that I think, and you know, I've talked before about how important 4-H youth development has been to me. Well, I go back to exactly some of those tenets of that self-determination theory that you mentioned.
Love it.
I know you like a framework. Well, I am going to jump on your bandwagon right now. Because in 4-H youth development, we know all kids need 4 things. And you mentioned 3 of them. I'll add the last one, but you talked about connections. So we talk about it like belonging. Kids want to belong. And where's the first place they belong? They belong to their family. And the connection they have with their caregiver, key. Really, really important.
Yes.
That's why that co-regulation is so significant, right? They trust that we'll help them learn that inner ability to regulate ourselves.
Yes.
Then that second one is, hey, I want to be independent. I want to be able to do things myself. Remember those 2-year-olds?
Yes.
Myself. I do it myself.
I do it myself. I do it.
That's right. And then we want to master whatever it is we're doing. We want to get good at it. We want to have a mastery of it. So think about your kids in school.
Yeah.
They want to do well and they want to show you what they can do. Think about sports.
Yes.
How are we mastering what it is we know how to do?
Yes.
And then last, the fourth one that I think about is generosity. How can I learn what it is that I need to learn and then practice showing others, practicing being kind and generous to other people, just sharing those kinds of things. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that if we think about young people and knowing and helping them regulate some of the values, some of our
Yes.
co-parenting, co-regulating, all the
Co-
co's
all
go
of the
together.
codes.
Cooperation.
Cooperation. And how about those C's that we mentioned several podcasts ago, several
Yeah.
seasons ago?
Yes.
The caring and the
7
communication.
C's of resilience. Do you need me to say them, Barb?
Why don't you? Because I think they fit right here.
I'll say them.
Okay.
Competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. And those are the 7 C's of resilience, how we raise resilient kids. But you're right, that regulation and resilience are at least related. Like they're at least cousins,
Yes.
right? They build each
are
other.
related. They
Mhm.
are related. So that's my thought for today. And thanks for having me on season 9 with you. And I'm looking forward to unpacking a few more ideas, Mackenzie, like you said, to add to our understanding of how best we can help our young people regulate.
Love
Yes.
it.
Thanks so much, Barb.
Thanks,
You are so
Barb.
welcome.
Yeah. Regulation is a kind of a sweet spot in your knowledge.
Yes.
So we always love when Barb can hop in here and share just the way that she thinks about it and the empathy she brings to it. And
Yes.
yeah, so we're excited to have her hanging with us in season 9. So that, our Stop Breathe Talk space, when we bring in one of our teammates here to talk about it, is kind of where we wrap up. And so, I mean, that was it, right? We're talking about understanding regulation, and that we each may have a little bit of a different take on it.
Yep.
Looking at those 3 different kinds, which I think you might hear more about this season.
I bet.
we'll
just
keep
suspect.
seeing those come through. But then looking at how do we make this happen? And we're going to keep digging into it. But initially today we say helping our kids internalize those things and making them routine are a good starting place. But that's where we are for today. But
They are.
And
All
stop
right,
free
so-
talk. Oh,
so
I almost
what's-
forgot we said stop free talk.
I know we did say stop retalk, didn't
And
we?
that.
It's just become something like it's just
of
so
course.
well, of course we do that, don't we? Don't we
Yes.
do that? Yes. All right. So next episode, right? The thing we're going to talk about is regulation that parents do. Like,
Hopefully do.
how do we regulate? Okay. And how does our self-regulating affect our kids? So that's hang with us. We're going to do that next episode.
I'm excited for people to hear the title. I'm excited for the title of the episode.
I don't even know the title yet.
I know.
Right.
You don't know yet.
Yeah.
You'll find out.
But thanks for joining us today on the Science Parenting Podcast. And just a friendly reminder that you can subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. And don't miss the rest of the episodes that come out this season on regulation.
Yes. Please do come along with us as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Lori Cohosts and Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.